I don't even get it. Ford F-250, two of them, with the Wi-Fi and the nitrous booster. You know how we do it,
Is it better to be loved or feared?
That's a good question.
I'm feeling like fucking you up. I still got the stick in the truck. I'm treating this bitch like a cup. Mac, loading it up. Hit your neck and your back and your front. Circle around and send you to the sun. I don't hide from your bums. I survived through the slums. When you die, they'll adjust. Fuck it, I'm breaking you off. Bitch, I came back with the high point, cause I know that you saw. I know what I know. But let him catch you something, catch my eyes wide like
Peggy 18.
My entire life, the concept of justice really intrigued me. If you think about it, it's really a universal concept. A lot of animals, humans included, have concepts of justice and fairness, but those are never really agreed upon in terms of, one, what they mean, and two, how one goes about achieving these two things. Death Note is an interesting show because it discusses this question constantly. What is justice? Now, there are two words that can properly sum up Death Note. Justice and hubris. Death Note is a show almost solely composed of these two themes, and poses the question, is it justice to kill all criminals? And even if it is, what commands Light to kill is not a sense of justice, but rather of hubris. Light Yagami, from a straightforward perspective, is nothing but a crazy serial killer. But, from a more grandiose point of view, he was someone who was trying to become, as he put it, the god of the new world. A world that he would usher in through his sense of justice. And his sense of justice meant killing anybody who would get in his way. Now, the author intentionally split up the world of Death Note into two camps. One, Kira worshippers, and two, Kira deniers. Now, he did this because the argument of executing criminals is an argument that's been going on since the state has been executing criminals. And the fact that there are many parallels between the philosophical conversation of Death Row being morally upright and Light Yagami killing criminals is not an accident. Because at their core, they're really the same question, no? The point of Death Row has always been to kill criminals whose crimes were so heinous that even keeping them in prison for life would be too much of a luxury. The only difference between Death Row and Light is that Light kills all criminals. Period. End of story. So, the question arises, what exactly is the issue here? A lot of major religions, as well as the criminal justice system itself, dictates that killing heinous criminals is not an issue whatsoever. And this, coupled along with the statistical benefits that killing criminals had in Death Note, it becomes a strange conversation of blatantly going against empirical evidence for the sake of morality. And for the first few episodes of Death Note, I didn't. It took a fair bit of thinking to reconcile the fact that, regardless of the positive impact, murdering criminals is wrong. One, killing people, even violent criminals, is not something that should be in the control of people. And two, specifically for non-violent criminals, killing them eliminates any chance of evolution, reconciliation, or anything positive. They're forced to live and die as criminals without even being given a chance to change. That's one of the biggest reasons why I believe that Light's sense of justice in Death Note is severely flawed. As flawed as it is, Light's justice had a number of positive effects on the world of Death Note, and seeing those effects were huge reasons as to why I was in his side the first time I watched Death Note. In the final episode, Light reveals that since
Kira's appearance 6 years ago, wars have stopped, and global crime rates have been reduced by over 70%.
See, it would be crazy enough if they were only talking about Japan, but no, he said globally, crime has been nearly eradicated because of Kira. And that's amazing. See, even though I vehemently disagree with Kira's whole ideology, methodology, and other ologies, and believe that he is genuinely evil, I would be an idiot if I didn't recognize a substantial drop in crime as progress. But at what cost? Seriously, that's a real question. At what cost? Because the number of bodies that have been dropped in Death Note between all the notebook users, Light, Misa, Higuchi, Takeda, and Mikami, are somewhere in the hundreds of thousands. And for some reason, people found that okay. Like, I understand there are a lot of people whose crimes were so heinous that dying just made sense, killing them just made sense, and honestly, I'm not super willing to argue against that, but those weren't the only people killed. Now, because the title changed a lot between people, I'm just going to refer to the murderer as Kira. Kira killed non-violent criminals, people who had repented for their crimes, civilians, law enforcement, Ellen Watari, and his own allies. And on top of all that death, he created a culture of fear where posting people's names and faces online was encouraged, and because of that, people were terrified constantly, even if they didn't do anything. And if people are afraid constantly, even if they didn't do anything, how the fuck is that a utopia? And I'll dial it back, how is that even a just society? I can't reconcile the world Light wanted to create with the world that he did create. It just doesn't make sense. Light said repeatedly that he wanted to make a world for honest people who obeyed the law, but all he did was create a society that permeated fear and was built upon the dead, guilty or not. When I think about Death Note and Light Yagami, I can't help but think of Icarus. Light's original goal was to escape a rotten world, just like Icarus's original goal was to escape the island of Crete. Both of them lost sight of their original goal. Both of them succumbed to hubris, and both of them flew too close and perished. It's obvious that all Light wanted to do was save the world, in his own way. It was a rotten world, and he was right to want to save it. But none of us are safe from the sun called hubris. And that's really the story of Death Note. To understand Light, to understand his point of view, and to understand his justice, however flawed it may be. And maybe if you're lucky, and you looked deep enough, you would start to question your own justice. The same way I did.
He died?
He died.
That's terrible. Why did he fly too high? He promised he wouldn't fly too high.
I think when Talus dropped from the sad heights above Athens, Icarus was already falling, as if a single thread held them all together. Talus fell, Icarus fell, Daedalus fell.
Hey, thanks for watching. I don't usually do shit like this, so I apologize if it wasn't good. But if you did enjoy the video, consider liking it, because I want what the fuck, Susan Wazowski to throw me in the algorithm. Also, consider subscribing because it makes me feel good. And finally, this is really for the sake of conversation in the comments. Give me your view on Death Note and Justice. Do you agree with Light's methodology, or would you go a different way? This is a topic that really interests me, and I'd like to see other points of view. That's it. I'ma stop talking. Have a good night. Or morning. Or afternoon. Or shut up. Bye.